robots make ideas? This is a question that's been sort of pursuing us since we first invented the Turing machine. And there's been a lot of speculation, a lot of thought experiments about this. What happened during the last couple of years is that we've made technological progress, so we no longer have to guess. We can test out this hypothesis. We can make experiments, which is what I have done. I've brought one here today for you, and I will present it under the humble heading of how GPT broke humanity's monopoly on creativity. And when we venture into this territory, we face up against two very stubborn dogmas, two cultural codes that are deeply ingrained into us. And the first of them is this thought that when machines will surpass us, when they become smarter than us, they will take over, they will enslave us, they will subjugate us and do exactly to us what we have done for them. This is something that we see all the way back to Terminator and The Matrix and all of these films. And as we saw robots get better at us, at more and more things, like all of the things that we thought were human have been falling like dominoes. First it was calculus, then diagnosis or chess. They got better and better at us in almost every subject. We always claimed that there was one last thing standing, separating us from the robots, which is creativity. There's this belief that no matter how smart the machines get, they can never compete with us in this innately human capacity of creating something truly new. So this is the second dogma, is that creating something truly new is almost a God-given gift that's unique to us humans. And what I will show you today is that both of these assumptions, reality is actually 180% the opposite of what we thought it was. Fun, right? Normally when I get to this part, people ask, who the F are you? And my name is Tao Thomsen. I'm a creative director of innovation at Vice Virtue, the youth media platform. And been pretty successful in this regard of making a living out of making ideas. So when I ask whether robots can make ideas, I don't do that because I want to skip over that part of the process, or I want to automate it, or I want to get rid of it. I do it because I love ideas. I want to dive deep into them. I want to unravel them, wrap them inside out. I want to go out to the event horizon of creativity. And when I went there, I found this guy. Can anybody tell me what this is? I forget this one. 1,000 kroners for the right guess. It's a trick question, so don't out yourself as a Harry Potter fan right now. It's the world's greatest chess player. It's what you call a chess centaur, which is the combination of a chess computer and a human player. So what they found out was that, of course, computers have been beating us at chess and Go and almost any game now for decades. But if you pair a small chess computer with even a mediocre chess player like me, for example, you get something that's better than the best chess computers and the best chess players. So the combination of human and machine is undefeatable, which is really interesting because now we are breaking down these dogmas already. We're not talking about competition, but about collaboration. And when I first heard about this idea of centaur chess, I immediately thought, how does that pertain to creativity? Maybe the question here is not one of competition, but of collaboration also. And that made me think about how our human colleagues fare in this regard. I've been lucky enough to work with a lot of people who formerly at least were among the best creatives in the world. And when I look back at that, first of all, anybody can come up with a good idea, but the ability to do it day after day, on demand, 9 to 5, is reserved for 1 out of 10 people. So, and even then, if you have one of these really rare people, the maximum amount that somebody can generate, like brainstorm new ideas for in a day, is around 4 hours tops. So say you have one of the 1 out of 10 people who can do this, and you push them to the maximum of like 4 hours to generate new ideas. Will something great always happen? No. There's 0% guarantee that a great idea will come out of that. And I've been in the room with some people who formerly were ranking like top 10% of creatives worldwide, sat down with great problems and tried to attack them from every possible angle. It's slightly embarrassing to exit that room then and have squat. But it happens more often than you'd think. So if this is the unique thing that separates us from the robots, we're not faring that well, you know. So that made me consider, what is it about creativity, about creating new thoughts, that is so incredibly tough, even if it's our most unique trait. And to do that, of course, we need to define what is creativity, what is a new idea. There's one definition that I'm sure you've all seen in some incarnation. I tried chasing it back to its roots. The first quote I found was from Mark Twain, and he says, "There is no such thing as a new idea. It's impossible." What we do is we take a lot of old ideas and then we make new and curious combinations. So far, so good, you know. What this does for us is that it's a very workable definition. It's a you can operationalize this definition. You can compute through that one, you know. Does that compute? That's quite likely. Combining old elements in new ways, that's pretty close to the foundational mechanism of how GPT works. So let's step a little bit back and look at that. AI, of course, is nothing new. AI has been determining most parts of our lives without us knowing it for 10 years. It was just always very backstage. Like, we don't see the algorithms. They're black boxed. We just click Google and we get some result. And it works, so we don't ask questions. But analytical AI has been in everything now for 10, 15 years. What's new is what they call generative AI, the kind of AI that cannot tell you whether something is a banana, but actually create an image of a banana, or in the case of GPT, create a description of a banana. So that's called generative AI. And when they say generative, it really means predictive. So the way that it generates words is by predicting the next word. I don't know if you remember, a few years ago, our iPhone keyboards got this feature where it would suggest the next word. Do any of you remember this? Like, you would write, "I am on my way," and it would say, "home?" Yes, perfect. So imagine that technology lifted to the power of 10 and then injected with a strong dose of steroids in the arm. Then you have a baseline understanding of how GPT works. Of course, the question is, if we want to make something new, then how do we make a system that's supposed to predict? How do we make that create something unpredictable? Like something that's fully based on probability and what the most likely thing is. Instead of asking it what should come, how do we force it to then say what could be instead? And the way we go about that is by giving it surprising questions. So the only way, there's no secret button that you can press that says, "Give me a creative answer." I mean, there is a button if you get all the way down into the inner workings of GPT. It's called temperature, and it doesn't work at all. Like, you can ask it to ramp it all the way up, and it will just put in random word substitutions. "The man sat on the fish." That's not what we're looking for. It's a new sentence, but it will not take us anywhere. Instead, we need to find new ways of phrasing questions that can come with surprising answers. I was lucky enough to work with this guy, all the way tiny here in the bottom, INS Thomas. Go and follow him on Twitter. He loves that. He was the chief creative director of something called Copysmith, like an AI tool that tried to make the copywriting process easier. But as a side gig, he's been consulting for OpenAI, and he made these wonderful art projects with them. One of them here is Sappho. I don't know if you, like the ur-mother of queer poetry. She has very, very few complete poems left to history. Most of them have just a few snippets left, and the rest have been lost to, I don't know, mice or weather or something. So we have only fragments of her poets, 3 words here, and then an ending. We have 3 complete poems though. So what he did was to train GPT, I think it was version 2, on those finalized poems, and then ask that system to fill in the blanks of the incomplete poems. So what you got was not necessarily the right answer, but a statistically highly probable answer to what word was missing in this poem fragments. And if you read it, I desire and I crave, I'm lost, I'm longing for a different way of life. At least it passes the vibe check. It feels like Sappho. So in this way, he used something that was purely mathematical, purely statistical, and ended up with something that feels much more than that. That feels human, that feels a little bit of magic. He also has another great thing out, which is called What Makes Us Human. He fed basically GP3, which if you look closely, that's listed as a co-author. So he wrote a book, the authors of which is 1 poet, 1 software engineer, and 1 algorithm. So this book was created by feeding the Torah, the Bible, the Quran, Srimad Bhagavatam, all these ancient holy texts, and then asking it the questions that everybody has about life. And it comes up with some deeply profound answers, actually. I did ask him, what do you do about the G word, God? That must pop up quite a lot. I'm not sure how your audience feels about that. He said, oh, that was a super easy fix. Manually, after we did them, we just substitute anytime it says God or Allah with the universe. I think that says a lot about modern New Age. But both of these are examples of using something that's fundamentally probabilistic, statistic, that's cold, hard math, and then turning these formula into something that feels everything but formulaic. It takes it from a formula to like a spell almost, a magic spell. And I was lucky enough to get early access to some of these tools like 2 years ago almost. And in the beginning, I used them in a very dumb way. Whenever I got a social copy brief that I frankly didn't want to do, I just fed in like all the old information from the brain and was like, just make me 55 tweets in this style. And it did that really, really well. I got to go home early. That's nice. I have 4 daughters. They love this technology. But at some point, I thought, if it's so good at emulating the style of a brain tweet, it figured that out immediately. That's like an open question, like a detail about the brain that nobody asked for, and then too many hashtags. That's very easy for it to figure out. Could it also figure out the structure of an idea? Could I use the system for social copy to make award-winning ideas? And when I say a great idea, an award-winning idea, the way that I know these is through the international circuit of creativity, like the award shows that form sort of like the pinnacle of the creative agency industry that I'm in. So you have places like Cannes Lions and D&AD and the One Show and the European Championship of Circle Jerking. I mean, Eurobest. And all of these have these case descriptions that honor the most innovative and groundbreaking and creative world and gives them like big shiny statues. They have by now converged on a pretty static format for what an idea looks like. There's an agreed upon way to describe an idea. It's like it's a problem, then there's an insight that unlocks the problem, there's an idea, a generally new thought, and an execution, a way to deliver this idea out onto people. So that's as formulaic actually as a brain tweet. And I thought, what if I take the very best of these cases, break them down into this formula, and then train the system on it? And what I made was this really simple system that takes as its input, I'll slow down a little bit now because this is when it gets hard. As its input, it takes a problem. It then transforms that following the recipe that all these award-winning cases are made from, and it transforms them into an idea that is the output. So problem in, idea out. This is tough. I put emojis on the next page, so it's a little bit easier to see. So this is the human side, and the other one is the robot side. luckily, some of these competitions, D&AD, they have like youth competitions for young creatives to prove themselves and sort of move out into the world. And they provide publicly accessible problems, great problems, really solid problems. So I had a great bank of testing material to feed this with. This is from D&AD Youngblood, I think is the name of the competition. They have 12 problems that a given year of students are supposed to solve to prove how good they are. And I took them and threw them into this system. So this problem, first one here is neurodivergence, that's all the letter combinations that you're hearing all about all the time, can affect someone's life in a huge number of ways. Banking and finance are no exception. For example, people with ADHD may experience procrastination, impulsivity, and difficulties with concentration, which can impact how they manage their finances. I think this goes for most of us, even though we don't have a diagnosis. It does for me at least. So I tried giving my script or my bot this problem, and this is what it came up with. It said, Neurobank, horrible name, but let's go, is an AI-powered impulse control tool that helps users manage their spending habits and prevent them from making impulse purchases. That's a pretty good idea, right? Like, I would love this, especially if I could make exceptions for sneakers, then I'm all about with this. And I Googled to find out if it exists already. It doesn't. So it actually managed to come up with a real solution to a problem that at least in theory works. But what's even better is that it also suggests how we could make this work. So it's not just like a left field thought. It has a recipe for fixing it. The impulse control tool uses machine learning to analyze user spending habits and identify patterns that indicate potential impulse purchases. Think for a second, what are yours? Lying in bed, Friday night, new sneakers just dropped. Yes, please stop me from this. And then displays a warning message to the user to provide them with an opportunity to pause and reflect before making a decision. I'm giving it 2 out of 5 points for this idea. I think it is, at least, it's a real idea. It's a real solution. It would never work in real life because who of you would ever install a tool that gave you, like, prohibit you from using your money? That's how you make people infinitely angry. And remember, these are people who have problems with impulse control. So unless you want them to destroy their phones, never, ever, ever take this out into the real world. But nonetheless, even though it missed a few fundamental points about human psychology, it did create an actual idea. Next one. Not terribly original, it's not super surprising, but it is a solution to a problem that the world hasn't seen before. I also tried to force it to think a little bit more freshly, to make ideas that don't feel as formulaic, and fed it with this problem. Abortion is healthcare and abortion is common. Without affordable access to safe abortion, women's health and lives are at risk. However, global awareness of medicinal abortion is low. So very, very relevant, very true answer, especially if we look out into the rest of the world, right? A little bit hard to parse exactly what is the problem because there's an element also of like politics, of personal opinion in this statement. But nonetheless, I fed it with this one and I gave it a little bit of a screwball and said, try to use a common female-only household product as a medium. So giving it guardrails to think about. And what it came out about is then something it calls the tampon revolution, a campaign to spread awareness about the importance of access to safe and affordable abortions through an untraditional medium, tampon packs. This is an idea. This feels fresh, like this feels super surprising. And psychologically it's true as well, because if there's one place where the patriarchy will never follow you and like keep a watch on you, it's feminine hygiene products. Like no browbeating father out there will go look there. So like strong, fresh take on it. And then there's I will not bore you with the execution. So I think here it got into the freshness that characterized like real creativity in a way. It even starts mimicking some of the language that we have around like justice in reproduction and female rights. It says like, we circumvent traditional patriarchal media that often ignore these issues. There's a little bit of like context awareness almost. There isn't, but there's the appearance of context awareness at least. So here we are up to 3 stars out of 5. And then finally, I fed it. This is not a problem that I took from there. It was just an assumption on my end, because I heard about like the rejection rates for newly landed refugees who, let's remember, have sold everything that they have. These are people who had like good, stable lives before conflict broke out. They have liquidated their entire lives. They have braved oceans and walked all the way through Europe and committed like probably a bunch of crimes to get there. And then everything, like the rest of their life, their fate is determined by how they answer the very first interview when they land at the border control. And nobody tells them what kind of exam that is. So it's kind of like, it's a life or death exam with no aids, no preparation, and no way of figuring out what the right answers are. Great. And it came up with a solution that it called Immigration AI. It's a free chatbot that offers immigrants legal aid, analyzes their cases, and offers specific advice on what to do next, whether it's filling out forms or finding a lawyer. I don't know a lot about immigration law, but this feels extremely helpful. So I put it out on the socials, and this person who's a rock star lawyer that I'm happy enough to know, who's worked a lot in this, said like, if you can do this, you have to do it. So it got some of the details wrong. I'm working now actually with a group of scientists out from KUA to make it happen. I'm now doing the work of the robot. And there's a bunch of ways in which it fundamentally misunderstood the details, but the core of the problem has these people fired up. And I'm doing the best I can to make it come through. So first off, can it create an idea? Yes. Apparently what we thought was like holy and infinitely human is maybe just a combination of words in a somewhat predictable order. That hurts when you made your entire living out of making ideas, I can tell you. But there's also a few objections that you might raise, and I'm sure you have more in your minds as you're reading this. The first of them is that the algorithm, now I write it, that isn't really true. Like, that doesn't know what the idea means. It's just a string of characters. It has no idea like what's the true impact. We saw that very much with the last idea, right? It put something out that was interesting, it sounded right, but it obviously doesn't understand the problem. You could also, if you're a little bit more of an ad person, you could argue that it only makes executions, it makes like one-off solutions, it doesn't make big, enduring brain work that you can build sort of equity off for years and years and years. That's also very true. Both of these things are very true. And finally, it doesn't know what ideas are good, which I think is the hardest critique that you can put on this. Like, it can make 100 ideas, but it doesn't know which of them are good. That requires a human person to filter sort of the gold from the mud. And in that sense, I felt that reminds me a little bit of some of my colleagues already, of the youngest and the freshest people who work in the agency. They come in with all those gusto and they throw like 100 ideas at you, and sometimes they don't even know when they say the brilliant thing. You have to go like, sorry, go 3 back. That's really, really good. And they, really, you know? So my AI here stands for artificial intern, because that's really the most likely, the closest analogy we have to how it works. And that shows me that one, the creativity, the ability to make stuff that feels new is not innately human. If that's what we pride ourselves on, if that's the last bulwark that we have, we're wrong. But secondly, this is not like the tyrannical dictator that we feared it would be. It's the opposite. It's something that we need to help and nurture and build up and guide along the way. So both of these assumptions turned out to be the complete other way around. And we could stop there and we could all go home early, but that led me to think more about this whole process. Jerry Seinfeld, brilliant. It's easy enough to create. The hard thing is to choose. And that's the one thing that it can't do. So our relation with this will always be one of guidance. And if you've ever been in like an apprentice-master relationship, you know that that's not first and foremost a power relationship. That is a compassionate relationship. That is one of nurture. And if you've ever been in a relationship like that, you know also that you will learn as much from teaching than the person being taught. So if this is our relation to AI when it comes to creativity, what then can we learn from it? First of all, we can learn the art of asking the right questions. And a lot of people in our industry could learn a lot about that. So once it has something that's almost there, far too many human creative directors will give sort of like non-directive feedback. If we were to build an artificial creative director, we don't need AI. We just need a set of dice and a piece of paper, and we can roll them and give one of these 6 stock pieces of feedback that most people will face when they bring in their hard work to their bosses. Whether that's like trim it down, build it out, just copy that thing that was great from last year, or my personal favorite, push harder. What does that mean? If you ask an algorithm to push harder, it will just go like bleep, you know? So if you want to amplify, if you want to accentuate the creative potential of this, you need to get really, really, really good at feedback. So, and beyond like making the machine create ideas for us, maybe the best uses for this is actually to train us in giving feedback, to make us better directors, to make us better mentors. Because this will 100% ignore any piece of bullshit advice that you give it. You have to be incredibly specific. You have to give it the little nuggets, like the household project, you know, a product, to lead it on. It's also a way to filter out all the bullshit jargon that's in our industry, and at least in the 15 years that I've been in it, has only increased in level each year. And I think we often find ourselves in sort of like at the Emperor's New Clothing situation, right? Where somebody says something like, unleash beep pink from inside culture, and everybody goes like, Nobody wants to admit, what does that even mean? Like, is this a meaningful statement? Does this mean anything to any of you? I gave it to the robot, it has no clue. It goes like, dog collars, you know? But often when we sit there as humans, we don't want to play the fool. Woof. So we end up playing along and going like, yeah, how do you unleash something inside culture? So I think it might not be about finding the solution to a given problem, but it's a great way of finding out, does this problem even have a solution? Is it worded in a way that leads to a solution? Another thing that I think is immensely powerful in this is that it helps us figure out what makes for a great creative partner. Because like for so long, we've had this really, really one-dimensional ingrained image of what a great creative looks like. It's often like a very white, it's very male, it's a do not give a fuck attitude, slightly privileged person who can afford to ignore all the objections in their way to bring in something new. That's such a strong image we have of like what a creative genius looks like. I have benefited immensely from this idea, by the way, I'm sorry. But now we can actually start asking ourselves, is that really the best way of getting to new ideas? And the way that we do that, I don't know if you read the story about when they released Bing, the Microsoft chatbot. Somebody figured out a way to make it reveal its internal sort of rule set. So through clever prompt hacking, they made it tell what are the rules that govern your behavior. And it was like, I always introduce yourself as, this is Bing. It is always informative, visual, logical, and actionable. It can do these things, but not these. It can point you to where to buy the tickets. It will never actually take your credit card information. I think that's a great rule that they made there. But we can use the same approach to see and test out what is a great creative partner. And I think maybe we're pretty okay on time. Maybe you should turn around and discuss this for a few minutes with the person sitting next to you. What makes the perfect creative partner? Maybe you're actually sitting right next to them. I'll give you a few minutes. Okay, so did anybody come up with it needs to be like a 30-something ex-graffiti painter with a broken marriage, megalomania, and a very expensive sneaker collection? Then you're doing better than the creative industry, thank you. Anybody has anything they want to share? Came up with anything? Yeah?
Have to find somebody that...
Oh, Mike.
So Jonas from the Lego Group, somebody who thinks in another way than you do.
Great answer. Yes, we'll get back to that in a second. Anybody else? Can we? One is enough. I love that. I tried piecing together some of the advice from sort of the industry greats, and I created something called Doyle, which is, of course, the non-famous guy who was Bernbank's partner. I wanted to bring him out into the light because I was sure that he probably did all kinds of stuff that Bernbank did not. But so I wrote, his responses should be, or the responses should be surprising, funny, and thought-provoking, should be unexpected and combine lateral thinking, metaphorical images, and reframing cultural phrases and icons. It should focus on new creative applications of different technologies, social customs, and behaviors to solve social problems. And the list goes on and on and on. This didn't work at all. But once I break it down into like one line at a time, it starts working. You know, and more so than having one perfect partner, I found out that you can have a range of personas and say like, okay, what this idea needs right now is somebody who has a deep, empathetic sense of some group that I don't know anything about, for example. Or what this needs right now is somebody who's not afraid of taking risk. Like all these different things. So you can imagine kind of like people who ask like Socrates and God forbid Elon Musk for advice. Who would you do that? You can have like a gallery of personas that you can spar with depending on the situation and the time of the day and where you are in the process. And I think the best thing here is, as you rightly put it, having something that you are not. Because that's what this industry has been missing the most. I hope they get it from real people, not from robots. Like, big disclaimer right there. But if you don't have access to that person, at least you can hold up a mirror to a different set of values that can lead you to explore new ways of thinking. So, even though I started out asking how we can teach machines creative thinking, I ended up finding what machines can teach us about creativity. And I want to summarize that for you, which is, first of all, ideas are not as unique as we think. The ability to create a new string of thoughts, symbols, words, and images, it's rather mechanical. What matters is finding the right ones. You know, it's not the creation of them, that's easy. But picking out the gold from the mud, that maybe is the last bastion of humanity for now. And then our answers, the answers that we get, are only as good as the questions we feel. I think all of these are something we can all take into our lives, no matter what we work with. And with that, I think we leave it to the questions.
Tao, you must be one of those persons in communications fields that really engage with this robot. I think you used lots of hours, days, months working with this. So if you should sum up the absolute best capacity of this, then what is it? If you should just mention one thing that is a keynote takeaway for us today.
I think that will be use it to augment your own humanity instead of replacing humans in their jobs.
That's good. So we should not worry about engaging with this robot on a daily routine.
Oh yeah, we should very much worry. We should go into this with open eyes. But if we don't engage with it, how then can we steer the road that we'll get in society? You know, if we let the tech mega corporations define the role that this has in communications and in our daily lives, that's perhaps the only way that we can end up with robot overlords. On the contrary, I think we should engage with this as with every other technology and figure out how to make it fit the confines of humanity instead of the other way around.
And you're one of those who used lots of time with it. I mean, what's your personal engagement? I could have done the same, I didn't. But so what is in you that sort of wanted to take this to the absolute limit?
First of all, I have to acknowledge that it's a privilege that I can spend this amount of time with it. I think I just have a natural proclivity for trying to poke holes in the boundaries of consensus reality. Luckily, I found a way where it doesn't get me as much into trouble as just into the media. So for that, I am eternally grateful.
Yeah, and you won lots of awards. If somebody in the audience doesn't know that, you did. You are award-winning, which is great. And I mean, maybe you thought about taking this robot to give you the next award. Do you think that's possible? I mean, is there such a huge potential in this field?
It's a two-faceted question. First of all, I think if you try to win awards, you will end up creating big scam work. Like you will end up creating a mirage that looks like it helps people, but it's really just meant to get you on stage. And I credit the majority of my success for resisting that temptation, that I am lucky enough to be generally engaged in and involved in the issues that I try to tackle, and then just lead my curiosity there. If that wasn't the case, I'm sure I would not have gotten as far as I did at all. With that being said, can this create an idea at the like upper echelons of international creativity? Not on its own, but just like in every agency, there's a wet behind the ears junior, fresh out of school, or maybe like dropping out of high school to join in, who has a perfect, like unpolished gem inside their mind that they just need a little bit of help to bring out. Yes, that could be the case here too.
And
but not without guidance.
Not without guidance. Okay. So now we've been into your head the last, let's say, half an hour. So let's jump to your day tomorrow, because when you leave the stage, you have an ordinary day tomorrow.
Yes.
What are you going to do tomorrow with the robot?
I think tomorrow I'm going to be a little bit tired of talking about the robot.
Then the day after tomorrow.
Tomorrow I think I will write pen on paper. But what do I do? Like, how do I use it in my everyday life?
No, I mean, do you have a sort of a new idea that we should know about?
No, I don't talk about ideas until they're real.
Okay, that's good. Thank you, Tao, for sharing all these thoughts with us today at this festival. Thank you a lot.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.